So you've probably seen guides about how powerful necromancer wizards are, being able to raise small armies of undead, or maybe you've seen the D&D Shorts video about how to cause a literal zombie apocalypse as a 15th level necromancer wizard. But what if I told you that a bard could actually do this a little bit better than the necromancer? Before I explain more, we'll go ahead and get started with the first 3 levels of bard, but as a quick disclaimer, this build is very much game breaking and it was honestly more of a thought experiment than a character I would actually play. If you do find this build interesting, at the end I'll talk about some things you should probably do before you bring this build to the table. And then with that said, we'll go ahead and get started with the race. There isn't really a race that gives us a spell we want or something like that, so it doesn't really matter too much. Just make sure you can at least boost charisma and then preferably either constitution or dexterity. And then speaking of ability scores, our ability scores that we're doing point by will be a strength of 8, a dexterity of 13, a constitution of 15 plus 1 from our race for a total of 16, an intelligence of 8, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 15 plus 2 from our race for a total of 17. And then if you're rolling for ability scores, I would prioritize charisma first, constitution second, and dexterity third. And then for our ideal equipment, we don't need a whole lot for this build, just an arcane focus, and then half plate and a shield once we get the moderately armored feat. To start off, you can just pick up leather or studded leather. And now we'll move on to levels 1 through 3. Like I said, we're going to take 3 levels of bard. For spells, first up, I'd pick up Vicious Mockery. It's not the best, but it is probably the best damage cantrip the bards have. And then for first level spells, I would go with Silvery Barbs, Healing Word, and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Hideous Laughter is a pretty good first level control spell. Silvery Barbs is a great defensive reaction spell to make an enemy reroll something, and then Healing Word is nice to have if one of your allies goes unconscious. You can just use a bonus action to pick them right back up. And then for second level spells, I would just pick up Aid and Shatter. Shatter is a pretty decent AoE spell for second level, and then Aid is probably one of the best second level healing spells. You can raise the current and maximum hit points of 3 creatures within range, so if you use this in combat, it'll provide some healing in the moment and potentially even bring someone up from unconscious, and it'll have the lasting benefit of increasing their maximum HP for the next 8 hours. And then for class features, first up we get Bardic Inspiration. This lets you spend a bonus action to give an ally a die they can add to any d20 roll within the next 10 minutes. The die will start off as a d6 and it will increase in size as we go up in levels. And then we'll get Jack of all trades. This lets you add half your proficiency bonus to any ability check that doesn't already include your proficiency bonus. This is really strong with things like initiative, counterspell, and dispel magic. And then we'll get Song of Rest. If your allies spend any hit dice during a short rest, this allows you to heal them just a little bit more on top of that. And then lastly, we'll get Expertise, and there aren't really any skills we need to make this build work, so just pick whichever ones you would like. And then for our Bard College, we're going to go with College of Creation. This subclass is the key to making this build work. First up, we'll get Mote of Potential. This just gives your Bardic Inspiration and additional effects depending on what type of roll it was used on, an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw. And then most importantly, we'll get Performance of Creation. This allows us to create any non-magical item. We're only limited by gold cost. The gold cost has to be equal to or less than 20 times our bard level, and then the created item disappears after a number of hours equal to your proficiency bonus. And this is a once per long rest feature, but you can also use second level or higher spell slots to use it again. And the first thing you might be wondering is, why is this important for a necromancer build? Well, one problem you can run into with traditional necromancer builds is getting access to enough corpses or piles of bones to make a lot of undead. With Performance of Creation, we can just create a corpse whenever we want. A corpse is a non-magical object. This has been confirmed by game designer Jeremy Crawford. If I can find the tweet, I'll leave it in the description. So this feature allows you to be just completely self-sufficient. You won't have to go searching for corpses or piles of bones. You are limited by gold cost, which could be an issue depending on what your GM says the value of a corpse is, but this is an issue we can easily solve with a feature we get later on. And then moving on, we'll do the next big chunk of levels here, levels 4 through 18. We're going to be going all the way up to 18 in Bard. We'll get 4 ability score increases or feats here. The first one I would pick up is Moderately Armored. This gives us a +1 to our dexterity and lets us use medium armor and shields. This is a huge and much needed boost to our AC. And then for our next one, we're going to go with Fey Touched, though the +1 to charisma is the main thing we want here, so if there's another half feat that you like better, you could take that instead. I just like having the Misty Step, and then some good options for the first level spell would be Gift of Alacrity, Command, or Bless. And then for the next one, I would actually go with an ability score increase and just take a +2 to charisma, hopefully getting it to 20 there. And then for the last one, there's a few good options you could do. Warcaster would be pretty decent for maintaining concentration. concentration. You could do Resilient Con for the same thing, and it would also boost all of your Constitution scores. Or you could do Resilient Wisdom if you're worried about Wisdom saving throws. Or you could go with Lucky, which would help out with all of those things and even more, but you could only do it 3 times per day. If I was playing the character, I would probably go with one of the Resilient options, but any of the 4 would be good. And then for spells, I won't go into a ton of detail here because these ones aren't really the ones we need for the build. We're more focused on the Magical Secrets picks, but for the regular Bard spells, I'll just list 1 to 2 of each level that I would recommend taking. For 3rd level, I'd go with Hypnotic Pattern and Dispel Magic. For 4th level, I'd pick up Polymorph. For 5th level, I would grab Animate Objects and Synaptic Static. For 6th level, I would grab Hero's Feast. For 7th level, I'd get Force Cage. For 8th level, I'd grab Mind Blank, and then for 9th level, I would grab True Polymorph. And then on to the Magical Secrets, which I will go a bit more in depth here as these are the spells that are important to the build. For 10th level, we'll pick up Wall of Force, which we actually don't need for the build. That's just a really nice control spell. And then Animate Dead, we do need for the build. So as soon as we get to 10th level, we can start using our Performance of Creation to create a corpse and then animate it. And then we can just keep doing that over and over again, and we can upcast Animate Dead to maintain control over a certain number of undead. One thing some of you may remember is that the item you create with Performance of Creation disappears after a number of hours equal to your proficiency bonus. But after you cast Animate Dead on the corpse, it is no longer an object or an item, it is now a creature. So as far as I can tell, rules as written, you just get to keep your undead. Since it's no longer an item, it does not disappear. So like I said, you can just repeat this process, upcasting Animate Dead to reassert your control over the maximum number of undead you can. And then for 14th level, we'll get Create Undead and Simulacrum, both direct upgrades to this strategy. Create Undead is a different spell, so it has a different limit, and then it creates a different type of undead, a ghoul or a wight, I believe. So you can use Animate Dead up to 5th or 6th level, and then Create Undead up to 7th level, and that would be your maximum number of undead, which is getting to be quite a lot. And then you could also make a Simulacrum of yourself that could do the exact same thing as well, and then you would have 2 small armies of undead. And this is where the build starts to get out of hand here at 14th level. It's manageable at 10th through 13th with the Animate Dead, but yeah, this is where it definitely gets ridiculous with the Create Undead and Simulacrum. And then on to 18th level, we'll get Demiplane and Wish. Wish isn't directly important to the build, it's just probably the best 9th level spell, but Demiplane is important for the build. I mentioned D&D Shorts video in the intro, he has a whole video on this, but essentially you can make your undead, load them all into a Demiplane, and then just put a portal to that Demiplane in the middle of a city, in the middle of a battle or something, and the undead will just start pouring out and essentially cause a zombie apocalypse. And to make the whole process easier, from Creation Bard at 14th level, we get Creative Crescendo. We're no longer limited by item cost for what we create, and on top of that, we're also able to create multiple items at a time, so we can create up to 5 corpses at one time and then animate them all at once, or use Create Undead on all of them at once. So now you can see what kind of things this build is capable of. You can animate a small army of undead without needing to find any corpses or piles of bones, and like I said, you can do it with a Simulacrum as well, so you can create twice as many undead. And if all of that wasn't already enough, you could use Wish and Simulacrum together to make infinite copies of yourself, but I think this build has gone far enough. So yeah, you guys can see now how game breaking this build gets. And if you do want to play it at a table without causing any problems, just talk to your GM and maybe the other people at your table as well. And on top of that, just sort of self-police yourself a little bit to put some reasonable limits on these abilities. And then for those last 2 levels, levels 19 and 20, 18 levels of Bard is all you really need. You could finish out those last 2 levels in Bard, that'd be fine to just straight class. Another thing you could do if you're willing to delay Magical Secrets and getting that part of the build up and running is you could take 2 levels of Warlock pretty early on in the build to get Eldritch Blast as a good sustained damage option. And the last option I would consider is taking a single level of Sorcerer to get some more defensive spells like Shield and Absorb Elements. But that's all I have for the build. If you guys would like to check out my last build, called it the Bugbear Nova Blaster. It's mainly a Sorcerer Warlock combo that's trying to get as many spell attacks on the first turn as possible. You can check that out right here. Either way, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.